Well, hello, and welcome to Women of Color, Money, and Legacy, where I talk money matters. I share strategies to empower us to become financially literate in terms of managing our money wisely, making important financial decisions, building generational wealth, and creating a lasting legacy. It's a journey of learning and growing together. And if you enjoy this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And that being said, let's jump right into it. Today, I'm going to talk to you about bankruptcy. When is the right option for you as an individual? We're not going to get into business bankruptcy, only personal. I'm going to share with you what it is, why it is, the different types, and its effects. That way, you can decide if bankruptcy is the right option for you, okay? So what exactly is bankruptcy? Well, bankruptcy is a legal proceeding by a person who's just unable to pay their outstanding debts. That's simply what bankruptcy is. And if you have outstanding debts that you are unable to pay, then bankruptcy is an option for you. And the key phrase here is that debt that you're unable to pay, not debt that you don't want to pay. So if you owe $10,000 in medical bills and you just decide that you're going to file bankruptcy to make it go away, that's not how it works. The court is going to examine your income and expense records to determine their course of action. Now, there are two types of personal bankruptcy filings. There's Chapter 17 and Chapter 13. Now let's explore Chapter 7 first. Chapter 7 is simple and straightforward, and it's the quickest form of bankruptcy because people who file Chapter 7 typically have little or no assets, and it usually only takes about 3 months to discharge under Chapter 7. But before you start shouting, you need to understand that you can only dispose of unsecured debts. And unsecured debts includes credit card balances, medical bills, payday loans, and personal loans. Now, there are some unsecured debts that the courts are not going to discharge, such as student loans, child support, taxes you owe to the IRS, and any criminal fines that you may have. And these are the exceptions when it comes to unsecured debt that the court is not going to discharge. Now, if you have any non-exempt assets such as stocks, bonds, cash, or other valuables, the bankruptcy trustee will liquidate this property and distribute the proceeds to your unsecured creditors before discharging your bankruptcy. Also, bankruptcy will not discharge secured debts such as your car or your mortgage payments. These are collateral loans, and typically secured creditors will not come after you during bankruptcy proceedings. But once the bankruptcy gets discharged, they have a right to come and repossess that car or put a lien on that property or foreclose on your home. So during bankruptcy proceedings, you want to reaffirm your debt with your secured lenders, which means you want to sign an agreement with them, basically saying, okay, just be cool. I'm going to pay my car note. I'm going to pay my car note. So don't take those things from me, okay? But you must uphold your end of the bargain or they will come after you. They will repossess your car and they will foreclose on your home if you don't make the payment as you described that you would. Now, there is an income limit that you must meet in order to file Chapter 7. Your average income over the previous 6 months must be lower than your state's median income. And you can just Google the term Chapter 7 bankruptcy means test for your particular state to get the income limit for whatever state that you reside in. Now, there is no limit to the number of times that you can file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, but you have to wait 8 years after the discharge before you can file another Chapter 7. So if you discharge in the year 2022, then you have to wait until the year 2020 before you can file again. And the bankruptcy will stay on your credit report for 10 years from the date that you file. Then it will automatically drop off your credit report. Now let's move on and talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Now, if you earn too much to qualify for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you may file under Chapter 13. And if you are a sole proprietor and not an incorporated entity, you can also file under Chapter 13, okay? Now, under Chapter 13, the court will not liquidate any of your property to pay off your debt. You will be allowed to keep possession of your assets, but you will have to set up a repayment plan for a portion of your future income. You'll need to create a workable repayment plan over 3 or 5 years. 5 years is the longest term limit that the court will extend your payments. Now, the term length of the repayment will be determined by the court. If your monthly income is less than the state's median income, then the plan is 3 years. Now, the court can extend that for just cause. For whatever reason, they might decide they'll extend it longer than 3 years. Now, if your monthly income is more than the state's median income, then the plan is generally 5 years. Now, once you've completed your payment arrangement, the court will discharge your debts under Chapter 13. And if you fail to make the payments, the court will just dismiss the case and your creditors will come after you again to recover the unpaid debt. Now, you can file Chapter 13 as many times as you want. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll receive a discharge every time, but there is no limit to the number of times that you can file. And under Chapter 13, you only have to wait 2 years after the discharge to file another Chapter 13. Now, there are different wait periods when you can file a Chapter 13 after you file a Chapter 7 and vice versa, but we won't get into that. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, you can just reach out to the bankruptcy court in your district and they'll be able to assist you. The day you file for bankruptcy protection, the law stops all collection activities and legal proceedings against you by your creditors, regardless of which chapter you file under. If someone shows up to try to repossess your car, just give them your case number and they have to back off. They cannot take your vehicle once you file, or any of your property once you file. So let's move on and talk about some of the reasons people go bankrupt in the first place. The first reason people go bankrupt is they lose their job. Now, let's face it, the average worker is not going to get a golden parachute or a hefty severance package if they lose their job. And if you don't have an emergency fund, that makes matters even worse. And so if you have to start relying on credit cards to pay your bills, you're definitely headed for disaster. That's number one reason. The second reason people go bankrupt is medical bills. In 2019, 66% of bankruptcies in the country were due to high medical bills. A serious disease or injury can set you back hundreds of thousands of dollars and wipe out your savings, your retirement accounts, and your home equity. So that's the second reason. Now, the third reason people go bankrupt is divorce. And you know how messy divorces can be. You've got legal fees, you divide in the assets, and Lord helps if the supporting spouse fails to pay their child support. You could be in a financial pickle. And that's reason number three. Now, the fourth reason people go bankrupt is excessive use of credit. Some people just cannot control their spending. You have more month than money, juggling trying to pay credit cards, car payments, and other loans to the point where you can't even make the minimum payments. And the fifth reason people go bankrupt is the unexpected. Things just occur. People lose their property due to natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes. And when you incur these types of casualties, you not only lose your home, but in most cases, you lose your possessions in the home. A lot of people don't carry catastrophic insurance. So as you see, in many cases, bankruptcy is the inevitable alternative. Statistics show that most debt consolidation plans fail anyway, and I can vouch for that. In my book, On the Road to Freedom, Journey to Becoming Debt-Free, I share my experience of enrolling in consumer credit counseling in the mid-90s. I ended up dropping out of the program or kicked out of the program because I couldn't make the payments. And later on, I did file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which for me was the best thing because it gave me a clean slate. I could start over again. And let me just mention a few advantages and disadvantages of filing for bankruptcy. And I'll start with the disadvantages first. The first disadvantage is your credit will take a huge hit, and typically around 100 to 200 points. So let's say you had a credit score of 750, it could easily take a nosedive to about 550. The second disadvantage is that you're unqualified for a mortgage or renting. Landlords may not accept your application, nor will you qualify for a home loan. And most home buyers have to wait 2 to 4 years after their discharge to qualify for a loan. And the third disadvantage is some of your debt are not dischargeable. You can't avoid paying Uncle Sam. Student loans and taxes are not dischargeable, nor is your car loan or your mortgage. You'll still have these debts after the discharge. The fourth disadvantage is liquidation. You could lose some of your valuables should the court decide to liquidate some of your assets to pay off your unsecured debt. And the fifth disadvantage is you have to work at building your credit again. Now, of course, you can do that over time. You'll lose your credit cards, of course, which is probably a good thing. Now, as far as the advantages go, the biggest advantage is that it gives you a fresh start. And this is what was so important for me. No more harassing phone calls and letters. And secondly, you can begin to rebuild your credit by getting a secured credit card. A secured card means that you deposit the money with the credit card in an open account. In other words, it's a security deposit. Now, there are some credit card companies out there that will issue a regular credit card to people with bad debt, but the interest rate is very high and they come with annual fees. And if your poor spending habit is what got you into this predicament in the first place, you might want to just stick with getting a secured card to rebuild your credit. Okay? So now the question becomes, should you file for bankruptcy? And the answer is, it depends. You should first contact your creditors and try to negotiate a payment arrangement that you can afford. And if they refuse, then what other options do you have? Or let's say your liabilities are excessive in comparison to your income and assets. You have a mortgage payment of $3,000 and your income is only $1,500 a month. You have another $10,000 in savings. And as you can see, within a few months, your savings is going to be depleted. And there again, what options do you have? Now, bankruptcy should never be used to simply avoid paying your bills. I want to make that plain, but let's face it, life can throw you a curveball that can disrupt your financial world. And bankruptcy can give you a new start. And the last thing I want to touch on is how you go about filing for bankruptcy and the cost. Now, it can cost thousands of dollars to hire an attorney to file a Chapter 7 and even more for filing a Chapter 13. There are less costly alternatives available. You can reach out to your local legal aid society to find an affordable or free attorney for your assistance. And then again, representing yourself is another option, which I did. But unless you have experience in law research and compliance, I will advise you to hire an attorney. Okay, so there you have it. At the end of the day, it's up to you to decide if bankruptcy is the right option for you. Okay, now next week, I'm going to share with you my women's car purchasing guide that will equip you on how to confidently negotiate buying a new or used car and avoid getting taken advantage of. And I'll share my own experiences of being able to navigate sexism and racism, because that does happen when you go to buy a car and you're a female. Okay, so that's going to wrap up all I have to share for you today. Thank you for staying until the end. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And click on that notification bell to receive an alert each time I upload a new video. And until the next time, take care, my loves, and bye for now.